The next race we'll delve into is the Attorney General race. The Attorney General, Greg Abbott, has left some issues to fill. And it's our job to find out, sorry, I think the mic keeps going out, my apologies. It's our job to find out which man is the best for the job. Dan Branch or Ken Paxton. We've allotted a little more time for the questions for this race, so to make sure that you're making wise decisions. And brace yourself. These will not be a little comfortable for either candidate. And I would also like to note, because I don't think they were here earlier, that I did not write these questions. All right. Dan Branch is our first on the list to answer the questions. Thanks so much for being here, and if you could just take 30 seconds to introduce yourself and tell us why you're running for Attorney General.
Great, thank you. Thank you all for being here. It's great to be back with you all. I was here, just seems like weeks ago when Greg Abbott came up, and so thank you for your engagement. To come out on a Monday night and give up your time from family and other things is a sign that there's hope for our republic, and so thank you for coming out. I believe, the most qualified person for this race. I'm the only one who's a full-time lawyer. I'm the only one who's practiced for over 3 decades. I'm the only one who's practiced at the highest levels and been given the highest ratings both for ethics and for abilities. Grateful to have people like Alan Fletcher in our caucus, who's the Tea Party chairman, to endorse us, and so grateful for the endorsement of so many of Greg Abbott's lieutenants. Now, open it up to the questions.
All right, Representative Branch, in 2006, you joint authored HB 3, which had revised the franchise tax to add the margins tax. The Tax Foundation has called our margin tax one of the worst in history. Your opponent, Representative Paxton, voted against it and opposed the bill. How do you defend your authorship of the bill? And you have 1 minute to answer.
Yeah, it was a combination, and we were also the largest tax cut in the history of, modern history of Texas, maybe in the history of Texas, is $7 billion, and ongoing each year after that. Some have now called it a $9 billion on an annual or biannual basis, so it's a very large number. We did revise the franchise tax. There is now a new revised franchise tax in Texas law, and instead of it being a 4.5% of net surplus, earned surplus, an income tax on corporations, it's now a flat, open, very small, less than 1% tax. In most cases, businesses are going to pay 0.5%, or at worst, maybe around 0.7%. So to me, this was a necessary improvement to modernize the tax code and to make sure that we had a fairness in tax equity and not just pick on manufacturers, which is what the old franchise tax did. So the time's up.
Thank you. General Abbott has a strong reputation for fighting President Obama's policies. Could you please share with us your priorities and goals for the office? And you have 1.5 minutes.
You said his what? His priority?
General Abbott has a strong reputation for fighting President Obama's policies.
Absolutely.
Could you please share with us your priorities and goals for the office?
That will be the #1 priority, standing up to an overreaching federal government, standing up to this Attorney General Holder. We've seen what they've done so far. We've seen the comments in the State of the Union from this president. We've seen this General Holder go to a national convention of states' attorney generals and tell them to basically walk away from their state constitutions and their state laws, particularly with respect to traditional marriage. So we've seen what these guys have done before November. Imagine what they're going to be like after November when they don't have a political break on them. These guys can't be reelected. They know it. They've got 2 years until 2016. This is about to get worse, and therefore it's really important we have someone who has a track record of being an effective conservative and getting things done. That's why we've talked so much about passing the moment of silence. We push back. I push back working with Greg Abbott, Solicitor Cruz, Solicitor O, and we actually got prayer returned back to the schools, the Texas Pledge, the U.S. Pledge. So I have a record of pushing back against federal power, and I have a record of advancing open government. That's an important part of this job. We have to have a transparent Attorney General. We have some troubling allegations made today against my opponent. I will have a different approach. We have to have answers to these questions. Texans must know whether or not the person who's going to be the next Attorney General has violated criminal or civil laws. And so these are deeply troubling issues. I have a record. I have a record of pushing back against federal power. That will be the #1 priority. I have a record of advancing transparent government so you all can look in and see government, pass constitutional amendments in that regard. And I have a record of preserving limited government in Texas.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
There's been some controversy over an amendment you authored that was considered anti-life by some pro-life groups around the state. The bill considered provided for abortion in the case of a baby not having a brain, and you amended it to provide for abortion if any organ at all was missing. Pro-life groups have fought hard to have the bill killed and won. Can you please tell us about this, and is this criticism for the amendment fair?
And how much time?
You have 1 minute.
I've been pro-life my whole career. That's my record. I voted for all the major pieces of legislation that we've passed, your Republican majority and the conservative majority in the last 10 years, the last 12 years in the House. I have stood up and I've advocated most recently in the Fifth Circuit. I'm the only one who's filed a brief and litigating in the Fifth Circuit today, advancing the House Bill 2 legislation. My opponent is not even authorized in the Fifth Circuit. So I am standing up for life, and I stood up for life this summer and worked hard in the legislature and wrote a letter to Governor Perry asking him to put this legislation on the agenda. And in 2005, that amendment we both voted for, it wasn't, the question's wrong, it was vital organs, and I was only trying to make sure we were consistent, just like I was in the Moment of Silence bill, to make sure we would pass constitutional muster so that we weren't arbitrary and there was a reasonable basis. And it was consistent. We both voted for the ultimate amendment. We both voted for the other exceptions. We both voted for House Bill 2 that had fetal abnormalities in it as an exception. So this is a false charge, and that's why Joe Poyman and the Texas Coalition for Life have called it blatantly false and called it using the unborn to get political points.
Appreciate it. All right.
I don't know who's writing the questions, but they need to be careful with their words.
I just read what's written. You have previously supported Joe Strauss as Speaker of the House. Would you do so again if you were in that position? And just take 30 seconds to share. 30
seconds? Please keep it, okay.
Yeah.
I supported Tom Craddock when I came in 2003, the first Republican majority since Reconstruction. I stayed with Tom Craddock for multiple sessions. I ultimately supported the new Speaker, Joe Strauss. And under either Speaker, both Speakers, we have had one of the greatest advances of conservative legislation in this country. That's why 1,400 people a day are pouring in here, because we have a AAA rating, because we have the lowest spending per capita of any major state just about. And we have balanced our budgets, and we have more money in the rainy day fund than we've ever had since it was created the last 2 sessions.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. And just like to point out that I think part of the challenge with the I had not read these questions before because we didn't have confirmation we'd be here until today. So my apologies if there's anything we did not get to double check beforehand today. That's
absolutely okay. Just let me know what they are and how much time.
All right. We would like to hear from you compared to your opponent how you are more qualified for this position. If you could take 1 minute to share your experience and qualifications.
As I mentioned, I'm the only one who's a full-time lawyer. I think this position calls for a full-time lawyer. I practiced for 30 years. I've been in one of our largest firms as a young lawyer. I learned my trade. I started my own firm. I built it up. I merged it into now one of the largest firms in the state. I'm the only one practiced at the highest level. I've got the AV rating. My opponent does not. I've had that rating for over 20 years. I'm the only one who's practiced for 3 decades. And I'm the only one who is admitted to the U.S. Supreme Court. I'm fighting the Hobby Lobby case. I filed a brief to fight back against Obamacare. And my opponent, thank you, my opponent is not even authorized to be admitted to the U.S. Supreme Court. My opponent is not authorized in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. My opponent has not filed a brief in the Texas Supreme Court, which I have recently filed, to push back against traditional marriage. So I am the candidate that's qualified and able and showing the discipline and the litigation skills to push back in our highest courts on the key issues of federal overreach today in Texas.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Last session, SB 346 was vetoed by Governor Perry. This bill would have been unfairly put requirements on some groups in Texas, including the Tea Party, but would exempt labor unions. Some touted that this is about transparency, which is great, but only if it's done fairly across the board. Did you vote for this bill, and would you vote for it again? Please take 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Yes, I did vote for the bill. I'm from the transparency guy. That's where we have to have open government. I have a strong record of being for open government. I voted against the exemptions for labor unions. I pushed hard for transparency. Whether you're left or right, we have to have a transparent government. That's why we have to have people that file their Ethics Commission reports and file their personal financial statement and register with the Securities Commission. And those are the questions we have to know about. If we wouldn't know about all the allegations that have been made against my opponent today. So transparent government is an essential to having a democracy. You all have to know what's going on at the level of the line items of the budget, and so I've pushed for openness in the political sphere and in the electoral process.
All right. If I could just, this is a personal follow-up I've got permission to do. When it comes to openness, we've seen recently with the Brendan Ike case from Mozilla where he was fired because he donated $1,000 for traditional marriage. How do you support with bills like this also protecting people like that?
Hey, look, we shouldn't be using openness to now do political agendas. I oppose all of that. But we all have to know who is supporting who. That's why we have campaign finance laws. I'm all about transparency in the public square so you all can know what's going on. I'm all about transparency. After all, the Attorney General is going to be the one who has to decide and make decisions on public information requests. We all want to know what's going on. That person is going to be making these tough decisions. Open meetings, open records. The Open Records Division of the Attorney General's office is the person making these decisions. We better have someone who cares about transparency in order to preserve our democracy.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate you allowing me that follow-up. Rosa Branch, you voted for SB 1795, which established the Obamacare Navigators Program in Texas. As you know, Texas is a red state. One of the reasons our current Attorney General Abbott is so popular is because of his fight against Obamacare. Could you please explain to us why did you support the bill that brought Obamacare Navigators into Texas? And you have 1 minute.
And, the issue is, when we had a bill come over from the Senate, and the House pushed back and killed the expansion of Medicaid in Texas, and put down the advancement of Obamacare, my opponent had supported the Senate bill that came over opening the door to Medicaid expansion. And so I voted against Obamacare, and I'm the one who's fighting in the U.S. Supreme Court, pushing back against Obamacare. I'm the one who's been reaching out to Scott Pruitt in Oklahoma, our Republican State Attorney General there, and Pam Bondi in Florida, to work with them, if I'm honored enough to serve, to push back against this dreadful train wreck of a bill, Obamacare. But we don't want to have people stealing people's identity. And these acorn-like folks coming down here into Texas and running rampant and defrauding our Texas citizens. So when these people come in, I did want to have some rules in place that they couldn't take advantage of the most vulnerable Texans.
Thank you very much, sir. As the committee chairman for higher education, an esteemed position given you by Speaker Strauss, you have the power to hold hearings into the corruption and abuse going on at UT. Could you please explain why not one hearing has been held, and do you support the idea that UT Regent Wallace Hall needs to resign? You have 1 minute to do so.
Hey, look, that issue is Mr. Hall can make up his own decision on that, and that issue is being looked at by a transparency committee that I'm not a member of. But the Committee on Higher Education has held hearings looking into this going back several years. And we have had the chancellors and presidents and regents all come up and talk to us about these issues that are going on in many of our higher education institutions, but in particularly at the UT system. And so I have been on point, and I have had a record of being an aggressive reformer in education and advancing issues, solving problems, whether it was the top 10% issue or whether it was Tier 1, or pushing for outcomes-based funding so we could have conservative control on our tuition costs. I've been the one advancing conservative reforms in the higher education space.
Thank you very much, sir. And for your last question, if you had, do you have any closing remarks you'd like to make, and you can share them, and you have 1 minute to do so.
Well, I think my closing remarks are, again, thank you all for coming out. Thank you for giving me the chance to come visit with you. To me, this is a really important position. Look, in Texas, we elect our attorney generals. We don't allow the governor to appoint them. This will be the first time in 12 years that we're going to have a new Attorney General. We need to have someone who's prepared, who's admitted to all the key courts, who's showing an aggressive stance, pushing back, who has fought and won, and has been an effective conservative pushing back against this administration, an administration who can't be reelected and is about to get worse. And I am concerned that my opponent is not answering the questions that have been asked. We have to have someone who's transparent. When we have serious questions being asked, we have to have answers. Texas voters have to know to make these decisions. We can't have someone who's supposed to protect Texans actually be preying upon them in the examples we've read about today. So my question to the senator was either answer the questions, as serious as they are, or else end your campaign. But you've got to talk to the people and tell us where you are on all these very difficult and troubling issues that have been raised today. Come speak to the people.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
As Representative Branch mentioned, there were some things that came out today that apparently Senator Paxton had forgotten to reveal some information. I apologize, we did not get this information until late in the day today. He decided to take it very seriously. He's working on that today. He's not going to be here. I'm going to go over a few questions that we were wanting to answer. Obviously, we learned today about some disclosures you did not make, which were required by the state. I realize this is all a new development that you may not have had the chance to delve into yet, but which is, by the way, what he's doing tonight. But is there anything you can share with us about this? And we would have given him a minute to do so. He's taking a lot longer than that and working on that tonight. Also, your ratings as a conservative legislator are off the charts, all A's and A pluses. There's no doubt about your dedication to conservative principles and grassroots. However, there's a story going around about you being a quitter. You said you were going to run for Speaker of the House against Joe Strauss, and then the 11th hour dropped out. We know there are a lot of behind-the-scenes politics going on for the Speaker race. Will you please provide with us an explanation as to why you seemingly left us hanging? And again, we would have given him a minute to do that. We had some other questions as well. He was not able to make it. He is working on those issues tonight. Representative Stickland has offered to be a surrogate for him briefly.
Y'all know me, I don't pull any punches, so I'm going to speak very plainly to you. You are learning tonight how easy it is to get up here and claim to be a conservative. It is a different story to go down there and fight in the hall behind the Texas House floor. That's where most of the fights go down, and that's why I'm supporting Ken Paxton for Attorney General. Because Ken Paxton was at those fights. And a lot of times, Ken Paxton is the one that brought those fights up. Ken Paxton has shown time and time again that he is willing to go against the grain. You hear these words all the time from people. Effective conservative. Let me tell you what that means to people who are in the know down in Austin. That means you're conservative when it's convenient, when it's popular, when it's easy, when there's not a price to pay. Ken Paxton, myself, other Tarrant County delegates down in Austin were on the losing side of many, many battles. We paid a political price to defend your liberties, your freedoms, and your pocketbooks. And that is what matters. That is why every conservative organization has gotten behind Ken Paxton. If you look at where people have lined up on these issues, where the special interests have lined up, and where the grassroots representatives, there is one clear choice, and that is Ken Paxton. That is why I'm proud to support him. And I just want to talk about this real quickly. I believe everybody got one of these. Notice the date. This article came out today. These people have known for a long time that this was coming because it was a coordinated effort by the liberal media. And you guys need to be aware of it. So it's nothing against Mr. Branch personally, but this is the most important job I believe that we're going to be dealing with. Because this is the man we are asking to go stand before us and take on Obama directly. And that's why Ken Paxton needs your vote. Thank you.